Folks, guess what? I am I'm on the right channel. Oh, I'm on that channel. Oh yeah. Oh hey, I can hear myself. Oh hey, welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining the stream today. It is Wednesday, 11 o'clock in the morning in Texas, and I'm glad to be here. So I don't need these on. I don't think I need those on because nobody's talking to me. Thanks for joining today. We're going to talk about some giveaways that are happening later today after the stream. We're going to talk about the Bridgecom Skybridge Plus hotspot, which is right here. And we're going to talk about some Anytone radios, which, as I've said in the past, is my favorite DMR HT that's in existence right now for the amateur radio community. We could talk about that later. If you want to know the details on that, email me. My name's Jason. I'm KC5HWB. I host a YouTube channel called Ham Radio 2.0, and I'm very happy that the guys at Bridgecom asked me to come here and talk about their products that they sell on bridgecomsystems.com and do a lot of giveaways, monthly giveaways, weekly giveaways on this live stream. I think we're giving away something today. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there's a Memorial May giveaway. I think the winner will be announced later on today sometime, and then they usually do live stream giveaways also. If you guys didn't notice it yet, they sent out an email the other day, and I was copied on that. I mean, I'm on all their email lists, so if you guys didn't notice it, they dropped the price of their Buddy FRS radio down to $30. You can get that. Go to bridgecomsystems.com and search for the Buddy FRS radio. It used to be, I think, $50 or $60, something like that. So they dropped it in half. So for an FRS radio, it does pretty well. It's really small, compact. Got that PTT right there in the center of it. I've got one right over there. I've used it a couple times. Gave it to my nephew when we were out the hunting lease one time, so that was all good. Forgot to change my screen in the back. That's okay. So today we're going to talk about the Skybridge hotspot and what it is doing with setting up your code plug and or radio to access the Skybridge hotspot. Now, Skybridge runs Pi-Star. And a lot of these Pi-Star devices are all kind of work pretty much the same. So this can apply to several other hotspots you might have. This can apply to, pretty much anything that's running like the latest version of Pi-Star. Today I'm running Pi-Star 4.1.4, and it's on this dashboard here. If you guys want to put there we go. So Pi-Star 4.1.4, you can see this right here at the top right. The dashboard has a date on it, and that date is 03 of 21. So that's kind of outdated. So if I wanted to do an update, I could come over here and I could go to update and I could let that run. It's pretty easy. So you just basically click on it, walk away, go get some coffee, whatever, come back, and it does its thing. One thing I will say about Pi-Star is that if you run into issues running with Pi-Star, make sure you're updated. Make sure you're running the latest version, because anytime you contact support, if you got your Pi-Star device from a place like Bridgecom, they're going to say, well, have you updated? Have you done this, the latest update? Because they do fix a lot of bugs in the updates that come out with the dashboard and with the Pi-Star versions and all that kind of good stuff. So that you always want to make sure you're running the latest version. And it usually doesn't take too long. It's just a one click, just like I showed you, and you're up and running and going again. So that's going to be step one. Anytime you want to troubleshoot anything. The other thing I say, and I said this a bunch of times about Pi-Star themselves, is that anytime you want to update, anytime if you think you're having an issue with Pi-Star and you can't get it to do what you want it to do, reboot. Okay. It's not Windows, but it's close. So it's actually a very solid, it's a very solid application that runs on top of the Raspbian or Buster or whatever flavor of Raspberry Pi OS is running right now. I don't keep up with all those flavors and versions, but rebooting Pi-Star is often necessary after making changes. Some changes will even tell you, hey, this requires a reboot. So just FYI on that. Okay, so now we're back here. Okay, and now you see this number at the very top right has changed to 2022-05-12. That's May 12th, and that's the latest version. That's all it takes to update it. You click on configuration, you click on update, and you wait. That's it. That's all you have to do. So now we're over here to this, and we're going to go back to configuration. And if you see, yeah, okay, so at the top there, it says an upgrade to Pi-Star has been released. Please click here to upgrade Pi-Star itself. I upgraded the dashboard and the software. Now the actual operating system, it's not an operating system, but the actual Pi-Star application needs to be updated. I'm not going to do that right now, but I can do that later. So if we go in here to the dashboard, now in order to log into, so let's back up. One of the things they asked me to talk about was Wi-Fi. When you first plug this thing in, it will come up with what's called an AP mode, AP for access point. And it will come up and it will say something across the front of the screen here about access point mode, no network, no Wi-Fi signal detected, et cetera, if you haven't added your Wi-Fi to it yet. Okay. I'm telling you right now, the easiest way to get around that is to plug it into the Ethernet port of your router. Take this next to your router, plug it into an Ethernet port. It'll pull an IP address from your router and it'll tell you what it is on the screen. And then you open a browser and you type in that IP address and log in, and you can see the dashboard that we're looking at right now. That's the easiest way to do it. Now, some people are like, well, I don't have Ethernet, or my router is Wi-Fi only. I don't have any Ethernet ports, or I can't access my router. Okay, fine. There's a way to do it without that as well. So it'll come up when you first power it on, let it boot up all the way. It'll come up and it'll say something like Pi-Star AP or Skybridge AP or something like that. And basically what you'll have to do is take your phone or a tablet or computer or something and connect to the AP. So in other words, the AP access point acts like a new Wi-Fi network you're connecting to for the first time. So you come up, you bring it up, and you connect to it. You type in the IP address of 192.168.50.1. That's just a default IP address that Pi-Star uses when you connect in the access point mode. You log in with the username of Pi-Star and the password of Raspberry, and it brings you up to this screen, basically right here. Brings you up to this screen. Most of the stuff on the left will be not lit up, not green. All of this, most of this will be blank. You won't see any activity in the window here. And then you'll click on configuration, and this is probably the point where it might ask you for the username and password again to get to this screen. And you scroll down here to the wireless configuration section, this red section underneath the configuration tab. Scroll down all the way here, and you can see you can go configure Wi-Fi like that. and scan for networks 10 seconds. Yes, my network is named QRZ. So there you go. You can't see the password, but my network is named QRZ. So if we click on scan networks, it comes up and it says, hey, this is all the networks that are within range that I can connect to 2.4 gigahertz wise. It says the SSID, the channel, the signal strength, and all that. The strongest one should be at the top. So you click on select, you enter the password, you click connect, and it connects. Now, my experience has been, once you do this, reboot. Reboot the router, or I'm sorry, reboot the Pi-Star device, have it come back up and log back into it again, and it should look something like, to get back to this screen right here, it should look something like that. You can see down here, right there, interfaces up is in green, and it says WaveLAN 0, interface up is green. It gives you your IP address. It tells you your network information over here on the right-hand side. I'm connected to QRZ. That's my MAC address for my access point, et cetera, et cetera. And it should connect like that. If it doesn't, try it again. And make sure that you're entering the right password for your Wi-Fi, obviously. And make sure you've rebooted. Technically, you're not supposed to have to reboot, but my experience has been that rebooting kind of resets everything, and it usually it saves some frustration and time and whatnot, so you can just not hassle with it. Okay, you can sit there and wait for it to just connect, but if you don't, then reboot it, and it should just auto connect. So that's been the easiest way that I've had done. Once again, the easier way to do it is via the Ethernet port, because this comes with this is a Raspberry Pi 3 or 4 board. I forget which one it is. And it has an Ethernet port on the side, so you can just plug it directly in, scan for Wi-Fi, just like I showed you to do, and connect to Wi-Fi, and then unplug the Ethernet. You don't need the Ethernet anymore. But if you can't access Ethernet for whatever reason, you can do it via the access point. Let's see. Let's scroll down here. Right there, right there. So you will see that I have, this is important for the guys told me that some of the questions they get is that the display is not working right. So this is important specifically for the Skybridge Plus. Okay. If your display is not working correctly and you log into the access or log into the hotspot via web browser, scroll down here to where it says MMDVM display. This should be Nexion, modem, and ON7LDS-L3. All of these are important so that this screen right here works correctly. Because you could put, I mean, the reason these different configurations exist is because you can put different types of screens on Pi-Star, and it'll work with all these kind of different types of screens. So if your Skybridge Plus itself is not displaying correctly, make sure that is set correctly. And if that is set correctly, then it might be time to call support and talk to the guys about why you're seeing what you're seeing. But that's the first thing they're going to check is Nexion, modem, and ON7LDS-L3. Because that's the type, the brand, the model of screen they're using on this Skybridge hotspot. And it's important to make sure that these settings are correct right there so that the display works correctly on the device. All right, so we're going to scroll down here. I'm going to show you guys how I have mine set up. So Skybridge Plus is the host name. In theory, you should be able to navigate to the Skybridge via host name. Open a browser on your network, on your local area network. Type in Skybridge Plus or maybe skybridgeplus.pistar, and it should navigate to it. I found that with my particular router at home, that doesn't work right. And that's because of my router. It's not because of anything with the Skybridge or Pi-Star or anything like that. With my particular router, it doesn't translate DNS names very well. So I always use the IP address. But you can name the host name anything you want to. You can put your call sign in there. You can say home hotspot. You can say DMR hotspot, Fusion hotspot, D-Star hotspot. If you have multiple of these things running, you can even put, you could even name it the frequency you're using on it if you want to. So that's the host name, of course, that's my call sign. That's my subscriber ID for DMR right there. This is the frequency that I'm using. All of these things need to be set properly so that you can use the hotspot correctly. Latitude and longitude, those are just kind of the default settings there. I didn't change that. You can Google what is my latitude and longitude and put those values in there if you want to. Grapevine, Texas, I wrote that in. That's where I'm at. Country is USA, of course. This is my own URL, hamradio2.com. This right here, this radio modem, this is also important to make sure that you don't change this or make sure you have it set correctly. Skybridge MMDVM HS dual band for Pi GPIO. So that's the radio modem that's inside of the Skybridge device to make sure that we're using correctly right there. So it should come that way by default. So unless you just go in there and start tinkering around with it, you won't have to jack with this very much. But if you do go in there and change a bunch of stuff, just make sure you set it back. It's right there. Scroll down to the kind of the bottom ones, like the fourth from the bottom on this version that I'm running right here. So just make sure that's set correctly also. Node type is public, private. I've never really messed with this myself. My understanding is that you can change the node to public, private so that only your subscriber ID can access the node, and you can't, if you want to make it public, you can allow other people in your community, or maybe if you're at a ham fest, you have it set up in your vehicle or something, or at your table at a ham fest, you could allow other people to use it. You can turn that off and on. APRS host enable, I have that turned off right now. You can change the APRS host. This one's North America right there. There's one for South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand. Okay. And then APRS HCR1. Public allows, so one small correction. Public allows, let's see, where we go. Public allows all unless you specify a list. So you can go in there with a list as well. So an access list, and tell it which people are and are not allowed to access the hotspot. Sometimes I'll get questions from people and they'll be like, hey, I want to set my hotspot up as a repeater in my neighborhood, put it on outside antenna, put it high up in the air, use it as a repeater. How do I do this? And I'm like, don't do that. The duty cycle on these hotspots is not what a repeater is, guys. It's not really made to run 24/7. And, you know, it'll probably work fine for a while, a few weeks, a month, maybe something like that. It might run for 6 months. I don't know. But eventually you're going to burn it up because the duty cycle of it constantly transmitting it's not made to do that. It's made for a personal hotspot for you to use, or maybe your family to use. It's not made for people driving by to use on a 24/7 basis. So just FYI on that. You can change your dashboard language there. So that's where all my settings are right there. And then this DMR configuration, I've currently got it set to Brandmeister 3102. Scroll down here. Most of these are in alphabetical order. So you've got 3102, 3, and 4. That changed. That was different before I updated my dashboard a minute ago. 3104 wasn't there. So typically what they want you to do is choose the server that's closest to you. It doesn't really matter performance-wise. You might get a little bit more packet loss if you have a server that's on the other side of the world from you. So choose a server that's closest to you for the best throughput and the best bandwidth and the best audio quality. And right now I'm connected to 3102. So that's good there. Hotspot security, there's nothing in there. This 08 is going to go on the back of my SSID, or my actual DMR ID. 3148141 is my DMR ID. I have 08 after it. The reason they put these numbers on the back, like you can change that to none, or you can change it to 01, 02, 03. The reason they put those numbers on the back is because many of us have multiple hotspots. So if you have multiple hotspots all connected to the same DMR network or the same Fusion network or something like that, they're sort of like an IP address. You're not supposed to run more than one hotspot with the same ID number. So you can put 01, 02, 03, whatever after it. And that way you can run multiple hotspots. You want to have one in your car. You want to have one in the shack. You want to have one. This is an actual ham shack. My house is out there. I'm in my backyard in the ham shack right now. So I could have a hotspot in the ham shack and have another hotspot in the house, maybe in my office, my home office or something. And as long as they're not on the same ID, they should work on the network together just fine, even though they're both under my ID. So that's one thing that is important to remember about that. Just make sure, if you're running multiple hotspots on the same mode, DMR, D-Star, Fusion, whatever, just make sure they're on different DMR SSIDs from one another. That's basically it. So when you change all this, you can apply changes. Yes, and also you can do different color codes too. It defaults to color code 1. You can change these to different color codes. And if you're running and now color code only applies to DMR, but if you're running multiple hotspots, and I've said this before, if you're running multiple hotspots on DMR, make sure you change the frequency and or color code on them, because that's how boot loops or how audio loops get started. You have a hotspot in the shack, a hotspot in the car, and a hotspot in the house, and they're all on the same frequency and color code, and you key one up, and it keys up all three of them, and that's how that looping thing happens. That you've probably heard it on TAC 310 or maybe 3100, something like that. It used to be more common. I haven't heard it in a while, but it's still very possible, and that's how boot loops happen. So if you have multiple hotspots running, change the color code, change the frequency, change the SSID, change the DMR ESSID so that they're all identified on the network, and that will keep you from creating boot loops. Let's see. You need to add an HS password. Oh, yes. You need to add a hotspot password for, okay, that's what this is right here. I had that before I updated it. So Brandmeister implemented, they used to have the password of password, PASSW0RD, and that was the same password across the board for all of their connections. They changed that a year or two ago, and you have to go into your dashboard, your Brandmeister dashboard, and set your own password, and then put that password right here. Let's see. I know what I think I know what my password is. Set that password here so that it will connect to the Brandmeister servers. So I'm going to add that right there. Maybe we'll do another episode later on about how to set up Brandmeister dashboard so that you can connect via your hotspot and set a customized password and all that kind of good stuff. That's probably a good idea for another episode, because that's all done on their servers. It's not done inside of the Pi-Star or the Skybridge hotspot areas. All right, so let's see if, yeah, it's still not connected there. So I probably don't know what my password is. Actually, yeah, I do. I know what my password is. I know that's right. Try another version of it. So I don't get on Brandmeister a whole lot, guys. I talk on TGIF sometimes. We have a Skybridge network here in the state of Texas that I talk on quite regularly. And my Skybridge was actually purchased from Bridgecom. So I have a Bridgecom Skybridge that I use on our network here inside of Texas. But we have access to certain Brandmeister. There it is. I remember my password. So you can see that this turned green right here. Network status is green. It was like a yellowish color before that. That's why I didn't have the right password set. It blew my password out when I did the dashboard update. That's why that happened. So there you go. So now we're actually on, I'm actually on Brandmeister North America Talk Group 93 and KC5HWB testing activating right there. So now we've got that listing DMR. There we go. K6IT just keyed up. Okay, so it's working. So I got traffic coming back to me. There you go. K04ZUL. Okay, so I've got traffic coming back to me. I'm seeing network traffic. Success. There we go. And Brandmeister Talk Group 93 is a North America talk group. It's a pretty popular talk group if you want to test out anything and just kind of listen to traffic and see who's out there. It's a good place to do it. So that's basically all you need. is these two small sections right here under general configuration and DMR configuration. After you're connected to wire to a network, either, I mean, and you know what, if you want to leave the thing plugged into Ethernet, if you want to do the Ethernet thing and not even fool with Wi-Fi, you can do that, and you're probably going to get a better throughput of signal and better less packet loss on Ethernet than you would on Wi-Fi anyway, just because of the nature of how Ethernet versus Wi-Fi works. So my shack is out here in the backyard. Like I said, I got to go through that wall into my garage in my house, which is where my router currently is. Don't ask. That's just where it is. And so I'm going through three walls. I'm going through three walls outside of the shack, inside the house, through the house, into the garage, through the wall of the garage to the Wi-Fi router. And now it's not distance-wise, it's like maybe 20, 25 feet that way. It's not that far, but it is still not right here. So if I wanted to plug in Ethernet, I've got an Ethernet router that's underneath my desk back here. That's hardline run from my garage out to the shack. So if I wanted to plug in Ethernet, I could get a little bit better throughput, a little bit better sounding packets coming from the network if I wanted to leave it on Ethernet. But most people want to use Wi-Fi. That way you can move it around, put it where you want to, of course. That's one of the convenient things about Pi-Star and about the Skybridge. Of course, you want to do that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just make sure you got a good Wi-Fi signal where you're located. So that's basically how you connect to Wi-Fi when you get the... Now, I will say this. The great thing about the Skybridge from Bridgecom is that these guys will program everything for you. So you get on bridgecomsystems.com, you look at their Skybridge hotspot, you're like, hey, I want to purchase one of these. You can send them all your connection info so that all you got to do when you get it is plug it in, wait for it to boot up, and it'll come up with your call sign, your subscriber ID, and your network username and password if you're willing to give that to them over the phone. And they'll set all that up for you. So if not, they'll just set everything up for you. Say, okay, well, I'll connect it to my own Wi-Fi. I don't like to share the password to my Wi-Fi. Fine. And they'll set up everything else for you as well. But it's really kind of up to you. But it's great because they will pre-configure most of this. This is what they call one of their plug-and-play packages. They will pre-configure most of this stuff for you, if not all of it for you, if you want them to. But that is that's it. And like I said, Pi-Star is pretty universal. If you have another brand of hotspot, you're going to go through very much the same steps. The Pi Zero hotspots, the smaller, more compact ones that don't have Ethernet, you don't have that option. So you're going to have to go through the AP mode to scan for Wi-Fi and connect via Wi-Fi like that. So, but the great thing about the Skybridge hotspots is they do have an Ethernet port on them because they're the larger Pi 3, Pi 4 boards, and you have an option of either Wi-Fi and or Ethernet. So, let's see. Let's I'm going to take some questions here in a bit. Guys, do we have a giveaway for today? Should we update Pi-Star Should we update Pi-Star if the current version is working? Good question. I would say probably no. I mean, if it's working, I would say just leave it alone. There's going to be a point in time where you're going to need to update, but it's not necessary. Like if they come out with a new version today, it's not necessary that you update it today within 24 hours or everything's going to catch on fire. It doesn't work that way. So no, if it's working for you and everything's hunky-dory, I wouldn't jack with it. But in the future, if you ever come up with something, you try to go change configurations, you add a new Wi-Fi network, you change something, and you're like, man, this isn't working the way it's supposed to, then you should probably go ahead and do an update. So, right. Okay. So we're going to do a Bridgecom Plus giveaway and a giveaway of a membership. And then a person who is already a member is going to win an 878 today. So standard giveaways that are happening today. So I'll let you guys cue me on that when y'all are ready to do that. Is rolling back updates possible? You know what? I bet if you're a Linux guru and you know how to do that sort of thing, you could probably do that, but I've never tried that before. Not natively. It's not, there's not an option inside the Pi-Star dashboard to choose an older version. You just click on update and let it go. So the answer to that question is probably, but I don't know how to do it because I've never attempted that before. So, well, I mean, it's amazing what you can do with a Linux command line if you know what you're doing. So I want to say that probably you can do that, but it's not something that's built into the Pi-Star dashboard. Why is my dashboard green? It's not red like on the screen. I think you can change that if I'm not mistaken. A lot of that. Are you using a Skybridge? Sometimes if you get other manufacturers or other types of someone else's hotspot or something, they'll change settings like that inside of the Pi-Star dashboard. You can go in there and kind of tinker around with stuff like that just for your own personal preference. Let's see. Yeah. So if you go to configuration and extra, I think you mean expert, not extra here. And then CSS tools right there. So you can change. Yeah, there's their background right there. You can change banners. You can change all that within here. So configuration, click on configuration at the top, click on expert, and click on CSS tool, and you can change all of that stuff right in here. I knew there was a place to do it. And that's I've never tinkered with that before. This is just the default look of the Skybridge Plus that I got. But yeah, you can definitely change that yourself if you want to. Boom. On the subject of Ethernet connectivity, would I be able to use an RJ45 from the hotspot as an Ethernet connectivity to an iPhone? Any experience with this? Well, anybody who's watched me for a while knows I don't use iPhones. But if you have an app on iPhone or on Android, whichever, that will allow you to export DHCP to allow your phone to act as a DHCP server, then yeah, I mean, in theory, you could probably do that. You could get like a what the heck is that iPhone plug? The lightning cable, whatever the heck they call it. Or in Android, it's actually USB-C, which is much more standard. So you could get a USB-C or a lightning cable plug to an Ethernet plug the hotspot into it, and run some app on your phone that enables DHCP. That spits out DHCP, that assigns DHCP IP addresses, and then the hotspot would look for that because the DHCP server, DHCP client is running on the hotspot, and it would pull a DHCP address from your phone and get online that way. So in theory, you could do that. I've never done it before. I've never done it iPhone or Android before, but all the stuff you can do with a smartphone these days, all the different tinkering around you can do with it, wouldn't surprise me if you could do that. Do you prefer private mode versus using DMR access list? I just leave mine on private mode. I've never set up an access list myself. But if you want to go out to, say, a ham fest or a club, if you're going to a ham radio club meeting and you want to put in people's access list, it's usually, I mean, you'd have to get everyone's subscriber ID and add it to an access list in a Linux configuration file, which is not hard to do. If you know your way around Linux, you can do that fairly easily. But private mode is the answer to your question. I usually just leave mine in private mode and don't fool with it. Any way to talk directly using radio ID to someone on 3148 or any talk group if they are on a different network than Brandmeister? Okay. All right. Some of your terminology is off, but I think I get what you're saying. Any way to talk directly using radio ID. If you're talking directly using radio ID, you're not going to be using a talk group ID like 3148. So that's kind of in that's kind of contradicting the way you've worded it is contradictory. So you can talk directly from radio ID to radio ID using networks, yes, assuming that you are on the same network and that network allows radio ID to radio ID connection. So you can do that. You can connect to 3148 in Texas through the Skybridge, but it does not connect to Brandmeister. So there's a long story behind that. I don't think I want to get into that today. It's not really the point of today's topic. But if you guys want to know more about, I've got several videos on my channel about how the network in Texas works. So go out there and check those out. But yeah, so you can connect radio ID to radio ID, assuming you're on a network that allows that type of connection. It's called private ID connection. So yes, you can do that. You cannot connect 3148 Brandmeister to the original Texas 3148 because we don't have that interconnected tie-in to those talk groups together. No. How to switch the hotspot off after use? Just unplug seems tricky. There's a switch off option in Pi-Star next to the reset push button. Use that. Yes. So when I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but after I updated it, the very last line says waiting a few seconds for the disk to go into read-only mode. I'm gonna catch flack about this when I say it, but I don't care. The safest way to do it is to power it off. The safest way to do it, put this screen up put my screenshot up there again, guys. Thanks. Okay. So the safest way to do it is to click on configure, click on power, and click on shutdown. Click on the big red button right there. That's the safest way to do it. In a perfect world, that's the way you would do it every time. Now, sometimes you can't do that because you're not in front of a computer or you're in a hurry or whatever. The fact that the disk is in read-only mode should not affect anything if you just unplug it and go. Now, I've heard people swear up and down that, oh, no, I corrupted a configuration by doing that. I'm like, okay, how? It's in read-only mode. How did you do that? How does powering it down without doing a proper graceful shutdown corrupt the disk if it's in read-only mode? Or corrupt the OS, I should say. Is it impossible for it? No, it's not impossible. I'm sure these guys are correct. Okay. I have never corrupted anything by just powering it off, but I suggest using this as much as you can because like I've had hotspots running at the house when my power's gone out. Guess what? Not a graceful shutdown. Booted it back up when the power came back on. I was fine. Okay. I've had hotspots running in my vehicle. Shut the engine off. Hotspot goes off. Start the engine back up, boot it back up. It's fine. So, but after a time period, I've heard a lot of people say that, oh yeah, once you do that a certain number of times, a dozen or 2 dozen times, you're going to have issues with the hotspot and it's not going to work properly. Okay. So use this as much as you can. Okay. I've never had that experience myself of corrupting an OS or corrupting a Pi-Star install, but other people claim they have. And logically thinking about it logically, I'm sure that's probably true. So use this as much as you can. Next to the reset button. I don't know if you're talking about a specific physical button on this sucker or not. Yeah. The easiest way to do it is just do it on Pi-Star through the software. I don't see a physical button on this if that's what you're talking about. So you guys can turn the screen off now. What is the advantage, if any, of a single channel hotspot versus a dual channel hotspot like the Bridgecom hotspot? So if you're not using DMR, nothing. If you're using Fusion, D-Star, XDN, some other kind of something, the dual band, the dual channel, dual time slot hotspot is useless on Fusion, D-Star, et cetera, et cetera. If you're using DMR, which is what we're talking about today because Bridgecom deals in DMR radios, then you can use your hotspot just like a repeater. So you can basically monitor 2 talk groups at the same time. You can set talk group 93 static on time slot 1, and you can set talk group 3100 or TAC 310. Well, you can't do TAC 310 anymore, but let's say 3100. You can set 93 static on time slot 1 and set your statewide talk group or 3100 or something static on time slot 2, And then you can set your radio, your code plug in such a way where it can monitor both of those at the same time. That way you can listen to 2 talk groups at the same time. You got friends on both talk groups that talk on them. You want to know who's saying what? You can monitor 2 at one time instead of just a single talk group at a time, using well, you can kind of do that with a single time slot, but you have to enable monitor mode on the radio. And when one talk group is active on the hotspot and another talk group becomes active, it's not going to hear both of them at the same time on a single time slot hotspot. But if you have 2 time slots, you will hear both of them at the same time. Kind of like full duplexing, sort of kind of in a way like full duplexing. So, but if you're not using DMR, I don't know what you're doing here today watching me, but if you're using it mainly for D-Star Fusion, there's really no point in a dual time slot hotspot. Does TGIF offer a much better selection of talk groups? Actually, the last time I looked, TGIF doesn't have as many talk groups. So Brandmeister has like 12 or 1,300 talk groups. Now, those are worldwide, and a lot of them are not in English. A lot of them are not in the USA. Of course, we're on YouTube right now. There could be people watching from overseas. So the last time I checked, TGIF does not have as many talk groups. Now, that doesn't mean they're not a good network. It's just they're different talk groups, and I don't think that they haven't been around as long, so they just haven't grown to the point of Brandmeister yet. Can I use Brandmeister and TGIF on the same hotspot? Yes, but not at the same time. So you'd have to change the drop-down configuration, which I can go back over here, guys, if you want to put this back on the screen. Once you go into configuration here, there we go. Once you go into configuration here, this drop-down under DMR configuration right there, this drop-down menu, these BM is Brandmeister, okay? DMR Gateway, DMR to YSF. BM is Brandmeister. DMR Plus is another network. Keep scrolling. Free DMR. Free DMR is fairly new, and I don't know anything about it. If anyone knows anything about free DMR, shoot me an email on my QRZ email address. I'd like to learn more about free DMR. There's TGIF right there. So TGIF network, and you would apply changes and change networks. You can also go to HB. There's these HB link networks here. All these different networks all these different choices are usually different networks depending on what the first 2 letters or words are. So FD, I don't know what that is. HB, I think, is HB link. Free DMR, Brandmeister, DMR Plus, these are all different networks. So yes, you can use multiple networks on the same hotspot, just not at the same time. You have to choose which one to connect to today, talk on it, use it, blah, blah, blah. And tomorrow you want to talk on TGIF or another network, you just change it right there. And we have some winners for the giveaway today. 131.42. There we go. You can actually do both at the same time. Well, you know what? I don't know how to do that, guys. Sorry. How do you do both at the same time? So somebody's telling me you can do both at the same time, but I'm never done. Oh, DMR gateway has to be set. You need to oh, well, yeah, okay. So with the DMR gateway, you can do damn near anything you want to do. But I'm not getting into that today. Okay. DMR gateway is, yeah. You can kind of make this thing sing a song if you want to with DMR gateway. But yeah. Oh, well, with a dual time slot, you could probably do that. I know guys who have their hotspot. I know guys who are running Pi-Star that have one time slot connected to a Skybridge network like we have in Texas, and the other time slot connected to Brandmeister. But there's a lot of configuration to that. So, okay, so let me correct myself. Yes, it's possible to do that. I have no idea how to do it. You have to use DMR gateway, and I've never done it before, and it takes some extra configuration to go in there. The easiest way to do it is like that. But of course, you can only do one at a time. All right. So I have winners for annual Bridgecom Plus membership, which is Carson WQ1L, or is that WQ1I? It's hard to read that. WQ1L or I, Carson. I think that's an I. Okay, WQ1I. Whiskey Quebec 1 India has won the Bridgecom Plus membership. And Brian, Whiskey 4 Mike Charlie Golf, is a Bridgecom Plus member, and he has won an 878 UV2 Plus. So congratulations to Carson and Brian. Carson WQ1I and Brian Whiskey 4 Mike Charlie Golf. That is that. You can do DMR to YSF. Yeah, that's not... The question was... The question was if you can connect to 2 different DMR networks at the same time. You can do DMR to YSF. You can do YSF to DMR, that kind of thing. So you can definitely do that. That's actually kind of fun to do. I've done it a couple times, but it's been a while. All right. You guys be sure to check out on the... there will be announced winners, I think, later today for the Memorial May giveaway that Bridgecom's doing. We've spoken about that a few times in the past. Also, they have... Yeah, there it is. $5,100 in DMR equipment. They do this. They do these things monthly, so they're really fun giveaways that they do every month. Also, they have a Zygu G90 HF transceiver, small and mighty, is what they're calling it. Most HF transceivers are either big and cumbersome, and to get the compact design, Zygu allows you to have the power output you need at an affordable price. It is a 20-watt transceiver, so it's more than QRP. It's not full powered 100 watts, but it's more than the 10-watt QRP. It does 10 to 160, and it comes with a built-in antenna tuner and SWR meter. And let me tell you something. The Zygu antenna tuners are top-notch. They will do a very good job. Used a G90 several times on parks on the air activations and always been able to activate the park with it. So check out the Zygu G90 on Bridgecom's website as well. So anything else to do today, guys? Or are we... I think we're at the minute mark here. Wrapping up. Okay. So, hey, you guys in the chat, thank you for joining us today. If there's any type of activities you guys would like to see on one of these upcoming live streams on a Wednesday, please put a comment in the YouTube video after it's done. Drop a line to Bridgecom at bridgecomsystems.com. Fill out their contact form over there on there and just say, hey, I'd like to learn about this. I'd like to learn about this. And do that kind of thing. We were tinkering around with the firmware on my radio prior to today's live stream. And I figured out that, I don't know if you guys remember a few weeks ago when I updated the firmware and then I couldn't get the dual display to work. Figured out how to get it to work, and some extra steps you might have to do due to newer firmware and newer configurations. So I think we're going to talk about that in a week or two. But it's good information, really good information to do firmware updates on your 878 Plus. So 73 to all. Thank you for joining today. Congrats to the 2 winners, Carson and Brian. And we will see. Tomorrow is the Ask Me Anything with, Adam. Adam, thanks. So tomorrow's Ask Me Anything with Adam, same time. 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. So be sure and check that out tomorrow on this channel, same exact time, 73 to all. And you guys have a good afternoon.